Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. We're going to be continuing from the series 80,000 hours in your career, which is basically going to be 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year for 40 years. That's how long someone's going to spend in the career. And we already went over chapter 1, what makes for a dream job? Can one person make a difference? 3 ways anyone can make a difference no matter their job. And now we're on 4. In which career can you help the most people? If you're trying to figure out what kind of career you're going to do to help the most people, this is what we're going to find out today. 80,000 Hours is a book. First of all, it's an online book, but they are making a pre-order now. It's going to come out in like a few days, actually. I'll leave the link in the description, and I'll also read right here. Read it online for free. So introduction, chapter 1, which is part 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and so on. And you could read it online, and it has things that you can see, and you can also listen to it. So if you want to read about it, it's here, which is basically what we're going over today, which is in which career can you help the most people? You want to make a difference using career. What do we do? So how do we choose which world problem to focus on? So we're probably going to ask ourselves which global problems needs the most attention. If you just do this, the problem you might have is that people stumble across areas that they're not that big, they're not important, or they're not easy to make progress in. And you're more likely to stumble across the problems that already receive the most attention. For example, you might think, oh, fighting cancer, but that's already receiving a lot of attention. So it's not easy to make progress on that. So from the book, from this organization, they developed 3 questions you can ask yourselves to work out which social problems are the most urgent, where an extra year worth of work will have the greatest amount of impact. That's the solution here. So the 3 problems are, is this problem large in scale? Is this problem neglected? And is this problem solvable? That's what we're going to talk about. Is this problem large in scale? The problem, if we think about if this thing is large in scale, is we have scope neglect. So what is scope neglect? The quick example of this is people fail to emotionally distinguish between big problems and small problems because their mind latches onto a vivid mental image and not the number attached to it. For example, how much would you pay to save this many birds? Either 2,000 birds or 200,000 birds. This is a famous study done by Desvogis et al. In 1992 and asked participants how much they donate to save migratory birds from dying in oil ponds. It may have not been penguins, but this is just the first and nice photo I found of a bird. So Group A was told 2,000 birds are at risk. Group B was 20,000 birds at risk, and Group C told 200,000 birds at risk. But the average willingness to pay across all 3 groups was approximately and roughly $80. There was no significant difference between telling the group 2,000, 20, or 200,000. And that's a factor of 10 times. So 10 times more than the previous group. So people responded to the emotional image of birds dying in oil, not the actual number. Basically, scope neglect. And this happened. For example, in Britain, they were saying the nuclear power stations will be switched off in a few years. So how can we keep Britain's light on? They said, well, unplug your mobile phone charger when not in use. Oh, it sounds like a great idea, right? So this researcher, or I guess he's a scientist or university, David McKay, he tests how much energy is saved by unplugging your mobile phone charger when it's not in use. He plugged in basically 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 different devices before he even got to like 1 watt of power from an unused devices, basically. So if no mobile phone charger would ever be left plugged in again, British people would shave off at the most 0.01% of their energy use. So instead, what do we do? This effort could have been used to change behavior in a way that could have 1,000 times as much impact on climate change compared to unplugging your phone charger when it's not in use. They spent money on advertising this. So what do we need to do instead? We need to use numbers when we make comparisons. For example, the number of people being affected, the length the effect lasts in time, and the size of the effects per person. Even if you make a rough estimation, it is good enough. Scale of all of these factors is important because the effect of an intervention on a problem is often proportional to the size of that problem, so the scale of the problem. So for example, if you launch a campaign that ends 10% of the phone charger problem, you achieved very little. But if you launch a campaign that persuades 10% of people to install home insulation, you achieve a lot more because that's going to actually do something for the climate change. It's going to reduce costs, it's going to reduce energy usage by a drastic amount compared to unplugging your phone charger. So when we're trying to have an extra year worth of work make the greatest impact, one of the questions we need to ask is this problem large in scale? So the next thing is this problem neglected? So basically, when you pick a fruit from a tree, you start from the lowest hanging fruit. And as more work is done, it becomes harder for an additional person to make an impact. All the low hanging fruit are gone. So this is basically what happens of diminishing returns. And I have some examples here. So as you can see, as more effort is put into a problem, the amount of impact goes up until it starts to level off. For example, treatment of malaria, you could say there's a good amount going on, but as the treatment of malaria puts more and more effort into it, it starts to have less and less impact because there's not many more people that need treatment of malaria if it gets there. For example, output of crops, that's something that people research a lot. So you need a lot more effort to make a little bit more impact. How about research in the medical field? That's also going to need a lot more effort compared to if you're someone here. Or research needed to shrink semiconductors. So much research is being done in that, so it's not going to have that much more impact. For example, another one that's very good at the very beginning is like parasitic worms would be an example. Somebody having parasitic worms is a far easier condition to treat than cancer, but we never hear about them because they very rarely affect rich people. The issues that we have up here at the highest amount of effort being done, they already get enough resources. For example, output of crops or research needed to shrink semiconductors. So that means if two problems are similar in scale, but one receives 10 times more resources than the other, it will be roughly 10 times harder to make progress on it. Another thing that allows people to put more resources or attention onto these problems is basically where there are relatable victims we can see in the news or that affect people immediately around us. So you're not going to be thinking about problems if nobody around you has ever had parasitic worms. In contrast, more abstract or less distant issues will receive less attention. Basically, if you're going to raise awareness of an issue, pick one that everyone isn't already aware of. And finally, we should expect the most neglected problems to involve the groups that are least protected by our current system, such as animals or future generations. Some questions that we can ask is how many people have heard of this issue? Are people unfairly biased against working on it? Or does this problem affect groups who aren't protected by our current political and economic system, such as animals or future generations of people? If you try to estimate how many resources have been devoted to this problem, this is the most objective measure of how neglected it is. So basically, to summarize it, to figure out if this problem is neglected, think about it like this. Is it somewhere on this half of the graph, or is it somewhere on this half of the graph where people have already put in a lot of effort to solving this problem, and now each additional person is giving minor gains to the amount of impact compared to if you're someone here, you'll be doing major gains per person working on this. So to bring it back, these are the questions that we're asking is where we'll get an extra year of work will have the greatest impact. So is the problem large in scale? Is this problem neglected that we found that's neglected? And is this problem solvable? So for example, we had something called Scared Straight. I'm sure you probably have heard of it. It's a TV show. Maybe you've heard of it, where they took kids and they took them to prisons and they basically tried to scare them and show them what prison's like and this and that. And basically, what was the result? It probably caused actually young people to commit more crimes. Why? Because they found that those who went through the program, they did commit fewer crimes than they had previously. Meaning it's superficially like, oh wow, the kid has stopped doing crimes. It looked like it worked. But there were troubled young people who didn't go through this program, and the decrease was smaller than the decrease for similarly people. So really, it did not actually cause much benefit. Why? They're not entirely sure, but maybe the kids thought jail didn't seem so bad or wound up admiring the criminals they met. But multiple studies have concluded with the same results. And basically, they found that each dollar spent on Scared Straight caused more than $200 worth of social harm from increased crime. To summarize, basically, of all social programs that have been rigorously evaluated, most, probably 75% or more of these programs, including those who are backed by expert opinion and less rigorous studies, turn out to produce small or no effects, and in some cases negative effects. So 75% of charities or programs or organizations that are trying to make a good cause, but they're not backed by research and evidence, may be causing little benefit or in some cases harm. So this suggests that if you choose a charity to get involved in without looking at the evidence that underpins it, that goes like evidence to show what the cause is actually doing, there's a good chance, 75%, you'll have no impact by investing in that charity. You cannot have a charity without evidence. You need to have a charity that shows evidence in the impact that it's doing. So that's the first step of, is this problem solvable? So before you work on a problem for yourself to figure out if it's solvable, we can ask ourselves these questions. Is there a way to make progress on this problem that is supported by rigorous evidence? So I just want you to remember that if we're going to work on a problem, we're trying to figure out which kind of career, we're trying to figure out where an extra year worth of work will have the greatest impact. Then we need to ask ourselves, is there a way that we can make progress by rigorous evidence, like showing that there's evidence of progress being made? And if not, is there a way to test a promising but yet unproven intervention that can help solve this problem? So we could do some testing, right? And it says, even if there is an intervention with a small but realistic chance of making a massive impact, such as getting a new policy passed. So for example, in this, what does this mean? If there's a company that invests in 10 companies, you don't know which one is going to succeed. Maybe this fails, or does not do well, is not profitable, etc. Investing in 10 different companies, trying to see what's going to succeed, but only one of them has major success. This could be a solution to a problem, a solution to a problem, a solution to a problem, and maybe they don't work. Let's say you want to clean up ocean trash. It's a global problem, let's just say, right? So what are you going to go do out there? Swim in the ocean, pick it up with your hands? That's going to fail, or whatever that solution that you want to test, it may not be successful. But if there's one solution, then it's also worth testing these just to find that one solution that is going to have the great success. So in conclusion, we just went over these 3 things. If we want to increase the amount of impact that we could do with 1 year of work, we need to ask ourselves these major questions. If the problem is at large in scale, is the problem being neglected, or is it a large problem that everyone's already working on? So it's a problem that's large, a problem that's being neglected. It's large and that no one is really working on. And is it even solvable? And these are the questions we can ask to find out. So I want to say thank you for watching. Hopefully you got some good, valuable information out of this. If you would like to see the entire career guide, it is available in the link in the description, and you can go ahead and read every single part of the chapter. It's under career guide here, 80,000 hours. And if you pre-order the book, you'll have the book there as well, or you can read it online for free. This is a non-profit organization. The goal of this video is hopefully just to spread this information and have people pick good careers, impactful careers. And not only that, they also teach you basically, if you see my other videos, how you can pick a career that's going to keep you happy, that's going to keep you feeling good, that's going to be the right kind of career for you. So this is why I'm advocating for these. So please, if you want to share this, that would be a great benefit to yourself and whoever else may watch it. And whatever great impact that they themselves might do from this inspiration.